Welcome to Talking to Myself. I'm Paur, your host. If you hear a lot of background noise, it's because I don't have a soundproof studio. My studio is my office, where my dogs bark, train whistles blast, and birds chirp. It's May, and that means blossoms on trees, perennials poking through the dirt, Mother's Day, and Mental Health Awareness Month. You might wonder why I frequently talk about mental health. It's because it has popped up in ways that I had never imagined, creating challenges for my immediate and extended family. The more I learn about mental health challenges, I realize it's not just in my own family. I think every family, if they're honest, has been affected by mental health challenges, either small or large. Because of this, I want to bring about greater awareness and offer some coping skills for those who are struggling and for their family and friends. To help us sift through this topic, we have two guests from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater Health and Counseling Services. Jenny Kwapil is a licensed substance abuse counselor, and Kathryn Colby is a licensed professional counselor and certified mental performance consultant. Let's get this show started. Hello, Jenny and Kathryn. Thank you so much for joining me. So, why is mental health awareness important?
I can start. Mental health awareness is just a big piece because I guess that's the start, right? If you're not aware of some of the struggles people are going through, if we don't talk about these things, people aren't going to get the support or help they need. And so, bringing awareness for all ages, genders, races, just making it clear that mental health struggles can hit everyone is a really big piece.
How about you, Jenny?
Mental health is something that it seems like people have increasing struggles with and maybe not even understand what mental health is. I think a lot of people think about mental health struggles and maybe not always think about that mental health is very much like our physical health. You know, we can be in a good state of mental health, we can be struggling, and we can maybe be at a place where we need support. So great to have awareness.
I have heard this many times that some of our physical ailments have more to do with our mental health than it really does with our physical ailments. Do you find that to be true? Is that just anecdotal?
I mean, it certainly can be true with particular mental health conditions such as anxiety that can show up in a very physical way, as well as others like depression as well can affect our energy levels, our just our physical stamina. So certainly, but yeah, there's increasing evidence it seems that we know the mind and body are connected, and that there is a role there. Yeah.
Do you know, or have you seen a change since they've been becoming more aware of mental health?
Beyond just the 1 month, there's been a lot more conversations about like specific populations focusing on those mental health concerns. And, like I specialize in working with athletes, and there's a whole week dedicated to athlete mental health and what that means. And even like now it's almost twice a year, there's a week that they kind of dedicate twice a year to just talking about that specifically. So I think that's more the trend I'm seeing is it's becoming beyond just, oh, this giant thing of mental health awareness. It's like, how does it actually relate to you? And yeah, just talking about it more in ways that people connect instead of just this giant picture.
That's a great concept, because you're right. A lot of times it's so big, right? Oh, I'm fine. Everything's good. I don't have any issues. But then when you narrow it down, now you said you work with athletes. I guess in my mind, I think, oh, athletes have it all together.
Oh, definitely not.
Okay.
And I think that's the stigma right there is they're supposed to have it together, right? That's what people believe. They're supposed to be mentally tough and all of that, and that's not the case. Just like everyone else, we're all humans. We all have things we go through, and sometimes that pressure can get a lot more. And they also have all the same percentages of, conditions and disorders and things like that that everyone else has. And yet it's oh, I'm supposed to be tough. I'm supposed to be a leader. So I'm not going to talk about it.
Right, right. I think also men, right? Do you find that? I think men are supposed to have it all together, people think. And do you see that men are seeking out mental health care, more or less than women? And do you think that's an issue?
I mean, I think that I I mean it's definitely the stigma seems to be reduced a little bit for men and their willingness to come to counseling. So I think we definitely see that on our campus. I think there are very strong cultural expectations for men, for women, um, and everybody in the middle to be a certain way that can definitely impact mental health, right? And we talk about sort of like that, who I'm supposed to be, athletes having it all together. There is just a lot of pressure for people to kind of feel like because I am this type of person or I have this identity that I am supposed to not have these problems, which can be a real barrier certainly to getting support.
Kathryn, you had sent me, I think it was you, I hope, about the prevalence of mental health disorders. Are they on the rise? Are you seeing them stabilizing? Could we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think
Either,
it's kind of a twofold thing. One, we are seeing higher numbers, especially with anxiety and depression. And I think there's two reasons for that. One, people may actually be struggling more, but we're actually diagnosing and people are getting the support. So the numbers seem higher when really, I think we've kind of always had these high numbers, but people didn't seek out the support or didn't admit they were struggling as much. So we're seeing a lot higher, especially with anxiety and depression. But again, I think it may be just people are actually admitting, hey, I'm struggling, or I need support, or I need help, instead of trying to minimize or cope in ways that aren't always the best for them.
why do you think, I mean, people are seeking more care, but you did say that more anxiety and depression. What do you think is happening in our culture that might be contributing to the increase of anxiety, especially and depression?
That's a great big question.
Right, I know
Yeah.
it wasn't. Everybody wants to pin it down.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
it's
I
social
appreciate.
media, or it's our cell phones,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes, yeah. There are certainly many things. Social media certainly, as you mentioned, yeah, is certainly a part of that. Now, certainly social media has good and bad aspects that can both support mental health with communities and just helpful information, psychoeducation on mental health. But on the negative side, right, there's that comparison piece that comes with social media. And again, those expectations that I kind of talked about that if there's a constant steady diet of that, that certainly can worsen one's mental health. And that is a big thing that we talk about in counseling is sort of assessing that social media aspect because we do work with young people and where social media can shine a little bright in their lives. And so, yeah, how do we make that more helpful for them? Um, but yeah, on the anxiety end of things, we live in an information age. We have a lot of information that comes at us through digital channels, and so anxiety can be increased because of a lot of the things that we know that's happening in the world that maybe otherwise we wouldn't be privy to. So yeah, so that's one. Those are two aspects.
Right.
Yeah, and just other points, as far as your original question of contributors to poor mental health, just culturally speaking, right? We don't necessarily live in a world that supports good mental health, which means sort of having a balanced life. We live in a world that we have, cultural expectations about who we need to be in the workplace and what career needs to look like and how much we need to be exercising. And again, there's a lot of pressure we can feel. And so, um, So that impact does not contribute to mental health, good mental health typically. So,
Right.
yeah.
Like, let's talk about the workplace. I know that even if you say I have a mental health condition or whatever, you're still expected to show up at work. You're still expected to do all your duties, which is, I think that's fair. Um, but are there things we can do? I know academically, I know lots of kids that go to college that have really good understanding professors. Maybe there aren't, but I think sometimes the workplace, school places can be places of stress, right?
I think that's part of like really talking about this and making sure accommodations are possible. That's something at Whitewater, I mean, we really strive for, and we have a pretty good Center for Students with Disabilities. And disabilities is a very broad term. So people who have certain mental health disorders can get certain accommodations to support that. And I think depending on your workplace, some may not be as lenient to mental health days instead of sick days or have that flexibility. But I think if we continue to talk about it and show it as a priority, and if you have physically healthy workers and mentally healthy workers, you're going to get a lot better outcomes. And there's a lot of focus on the physical health, and hopefully as we kind of keep seeing that mental health is a bigger topic, that they want mentally healthy employees as well.
In our emails back and forth, you had mentioned the importance of language. Could you explain that to us and why that's important?
There's a few different lanes with language. One, it's just how we even talk about mental health disorders, and one, not shying away from it, being able to talk about it because there's nothing wrong with talking about it. But also being careful what you say around people. We don't need to call people crazy or psycho or things like that just because they're struggling. Let's talk about these struggles in a way that's actually beneficial. And I think the other side of it, especially with the age group we work with and even the younger ones that maybe we don't work with, is watching what you say. We get very worried when people say things like, "Oh, I'm just going to kill myself."
Mhm.
If even if they mean it in not a true way, if they're just frustrated, we have to take that really seriously. And sometimes they get overwhelmed when all of a sudden all this support is coming, but it's about meaning what you say and saying what you mean, I guess. And that goes with kind of language that way. And also, when you do need help, say it. That's okay. You will get the help that you need. And also, again, going back to just talking in terms that helps the mental health struggles, not adding to it.
Yeah, we had my daughters had a friend who she came to our house for dinner and she made the comment that I want to kill myself. And I said, I'm calling the county. And, I'm going to take this seriously, whether you mean it or not. And I got through to the county, and then they talked to her and that. And then, like a couple days later, her mother called me and said, you overreacted. And I said, maybe, but I don't know your daughter. And there's no way if she's going to say she feels like she needs, wants to die by suicide or I have to take that at face value. I'm not going to just brush it off, you
I'd rather
know?
overreact than underreact.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, are there cues though? I mean, I feel like we'll hear someone from the community that died by suicide and we're all shocked. How did this happen? How did he take his life? Are we missing the cues that or the signals that they're sending us? Are we too busy? Are we not paying attention? Um, who wants to take that?
That's a great question. And I think, yeah, sometimes we do miss the cues, and those cues being, people maybe being withdrawn, maybe isolating. Obviously, I mean, I think the cues a lot of times are present. You know that someone is not doing well, right? For whatever reason. Maybe it's based on their appearance or their behavior, and there's a change or kind of a regression there, right? I think sometimes the challenge is that people who maybe don't quite understand mental health or are afraid of what they might hear from someone are missing that opportunity to connect and check in on people. And so that's what we miss. I think we miss that connection. And then when that connection, if that connection would take place, to actually show up for that connection and not dismiss someone as they'll be okay or they'll get over it, right? But to actually listen, just as your lovely example about, this daughter that was, sounds like at your dinner table and is, you
Right.
took that information and that was pretty serious information and certainly doing the right thing and acting on that. But yeah, to really listen to someone, to connect with someone and to possibly give a door or a window for some very much needed support. A lot of times people have such discomfort with people struggling, right? Especially emotionally in the mental health realm and not knowing how to deal with that, feeling so much discomfort themselves that they say something sort of to sort of put a blanket on it, like, you're going to be okay, you're strong, or whatever it is, right? We do that
Right.
for us, but we are really not, we're dismissing sort of the person in need. And so I think just opening that door and being willing to be present with someone, and even if you don't know how to help, ask them, how you can support them, can be one way.
The other piece I think is sometimes you do reach out to people and they're like, no, no, I'm fine, right?
Mm,
And you see, they're not bathing, they're not, there are lots of signs, I think. And what do? You can't push yourself onto them or whatever. I mean, is there something we can still do?
Well, I think one, it's even before it gets to that point, like Jenny said, that connection, if we have those connections before it even gets to that point, they'll be more likely to talk about it and know that you're a space they can talk to. And then the other one is, yeah, offer those resources and, um, or, offer to dial, offer to do the things, offer to help them figure out how do you set up counseling? What does that look like? And other times, you're right, we can't force anyone to do anything, but if you're there, they know you're there, you offer the resources, then they may not take you up right then, but it could be at a random time. They're like, okay, I'm ready now, because they just know you're available. And like Jenny said, that connection is open. Um, and then, of course, I mean, if it is to the concern where you think something's going to happen, you're allowed to call, like you did. You're allowed to call those resources and have them checked in on. And
Hmm.
I will say they're not always happy about that, but
Okay.
it could be, longer term when they are settled and good and doing better mentally. Maybe that connection isn't there with you anymore, but they know that you're a reason that they're still here.
Yeah. How about, do you think we're a little too busy? I have a neighbor who, I would check in on her and, we'd talk and that, but then you just get busy, right? You get very busy. And then I saw her in the summer. She had just stopped eating and just like her whole will to live had stopped. And then I'm like, okay, now we got to call this and that, and then she started back up again. Um, and then in the fall, the same pattern, no eating, not cleaning, bathing, not seeing her doctor, dropping all her psych meds. Um, but I feel sometimes like how responsible are we as, people who are maybe, we have our own challenges, but people trying to help other people. I mean, sometimes I think I'm just too busy.
Yeah, we do have very busy lives, and yeah, again, I think this is a little bit of a fault of our culture, as opposed to other areas of the world you can live, right? Where there is more of a community kind of looking out for each other, where maybe it's a little more built in and there's more natural opportunities versus, we're somewhat isolated. We're kind of living in our own little world. So it's tricky to kind of navigate that. And I think, with this example and then our just previous conversation, community, trying to build up communities that support people is our best way to sort of keep eyes on people. So
Well, and I think sometimes, our inclination is I don't want to be a busybody, right? I don't want to be
Mm.
nosy. I don't want to be in her life or their life. I think that's don't you wonder if that's a little bit of what we're dealing with too for some people?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that issue. I'm very nosy, but
Oh, good.
but yeah, I think it's one of those like where's the line, right? Where's that boundary? And I think that's why it goes back to connection for more than one person. Because even if your best friend, like you two should not be the only people in each other's lives that you talk to. You can't rely only on one person, and that's why you don't need a huge quantity of people, but you need, a few quality people you can rely on and check in on and have that be a norm. Like not just when they start struggling, but have that be a normal part of the conversation of, hey, how you doing today? And not just the, oh yeah, fine, move on, or life's a dream, whatever.
Right.
It's about opening up and having the real conversations. So then when it gets really bad, it's not an, oh, uncomfortable, okay, I have to breach this. It's a normal thing. And at the same time, with the connection, we're also still our own individuals, and we can't ever make someone do anything or predict exactly how they're going to act. And so, if someone is struggling and they're not getting the help, you can do everything you can, and it may not make a difference, but at least you tried and they know you tried. That hopefully in the long run, there's something there.
Yeah, I mean, with Catherine's point, which is a great one, I think living your life as a person who cares for others, who loves others, that you create opportunities for connection and community wherever you go. And so, if someone in your life happens to be struggling, you put yourself on the path of them, having someone to talk to if they need to, right? A safe person. So that's great. And just another little point, if you sometimes, as we all do, think, is it my place to sort of ask this question, to interfere, right? There is such beauty in saying, I don't want to be a busybody. I don't want to overstep my bounds, and I'm worried about you. So please tell me, is this okay? Or, are you okay? There's nothing wrong with just being vulnerable.
All right, so I guess this leads into my next question about family and friends and coworkers. And I think we touched a little bit about that, but maybe we can be a little more specific. How can family and friends and coworkers, how can they help? Um, if they see something and
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, you can go, Jenny. I'll go after.
Well, just initially, if we think about family and friends, modeling your own emotional life. I think that's a little piece too of why we have some mental health challenges at present is because we really don't all know how to manage emotions and how to care for our mental health, our well-being. And so, what a wonderful thing it is in families if you can talk about how you have a bad day, how you're feeling, and what you need to care for yourself to deal with that, right? So we can display emotions, varying emotions, and maybe how they make us feel, how we cope with those things. That's a wonderful way to demonstrate to others how they could also deal with difficult emotions, cope with the stressors of life, whatever it is, and with our friends as well, and that it's okay to not have all the great emotions all the time.
I say a lot of the same things. And I think even with coworkers, I think that varies on the place of work, right? Like the size of it, but if you can be honest enough with someone there where it's like today's a rough day, like I'm not going to get my to-do list done, or being able to take the time off you have, like that you can, like it's okay to take a day off and it not be some big vacation. um but I think it also goes back to just having those conversations and language, and also what are the resources. I think sometimes we don't even know what they are, and now it's very simple, at least the national one, it's a 988, like you can call, you can text, it's three numbers, but we don't always know how to talk or deal with when someone else is bringing up big emotions to us. And it's okay if that's not your role, but being able to at least sit with it and be like, okay, this is my boundary where maybe I don't know all about that or I can't handle that, but here's some resources to help you. And that may not be exactly what they're looking for, but it's a start and it's just knowing, I guess, just adding to what Jenny was saying of knowing what the resources are as well. Talk about it and talk about the resources. So you don't have to do all the fixing, but you can be supportive.
Where can people go to get some resources on your campus?
It's on the websites, it's on their Canvas stuff for their actual schooling. And then for people who aren't a student here, or even some who are, there's also winter counseling services, which is our graduate students through the counseling program. They do counseling for the community and for the student population. So at least on our campus, it's really nice because we live in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, that it's nice that the community has a free resource as well. But yeah, can come in and ask questions, get scheduled, get brochures, anything if she's a student here.
Are you guys pretty booked though? I mean, I know my daughters went to a college in Iowa, and my one daughter needed a little help, support, and they couldn't get her in for several weeks.
I mean, it ebbs and flows. Yes, yes, we are busy. And but it ebbs and flows. But sometimes there is a wait. We always have an opportunity daily, as long as our clinic is open for sort of a walk-in crisis counseling. So if something is deemed a crisis by the student, they can certainly walk in, and then we have after-hour support as well. We're kind of that same. But yeah, we try to get them in, and sometimes there is a little bit of a wait. So
Okay, no, that's fair.
yeah,
That's why young people, we need more therapist people, right?
indeed we
To
do. Yes.
I think we see it in all, like my one daughter is studying to be a doctor and there's a shortage of doctors, there's a shortage of there's just all these I don't want to call them service industry, but professions that help or deal with caring for people. I feel like there's a shortage of those, you know.
Mhm.
Uh,
And I
right.
think
Okay.
there's also a mental health struggle within those services too, because of being a shortage, there's more hours, more expectations on us. And so speaking from the other side of it, I mean, there's also reasons why there's a shortage because we're not always getting the support we need either.
All right, so we have about 10 minutes, and talked a little bit about basic coping skills. Are there things that just everybody can work on a little bit to keep their mental health healthy, right?
Well, I mean, I think it's always good to start with the physical, as we talked about the body and mind being connected, right? So, caring for your physical health can go a long way in sort of a basic way of attending to your mental health. So, your sleep, your nutrition, your hydration, your movement. I mean, probably the most basic, most spectacular coping skill of all is moving your body, because that certainly supports our brain in ways like therapy does. So whatever that looks like for someone, and certainly we've dealt with people who have lots of limitations on movement, be it physical or mental health reasons, and just even a little bit of movement can help people feel better. But I think it's really looking at what helps people feel better, what helps them feel soothed, what helps them maybe feel at a place of comfort. For some people, it can be more of a distraction type of thing, like their favorite shows, their, you know, whatnot, whatever that looks like. For some people, it's more of a hobby. We do kind of lose sight of our hobbies in our current fast-paced life. Hobbies can be really an instrumental tool in coping, using your support system, maybe beefing up that a little bit too, reaching out to friends you've lost touch with, and trying to make that more of a regular thing. Those are great ways to cope.
How about you, Catherine? You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, those are all the top ones I always say too. And then, I mean, if we want to get into like more specific ones, I mean, breathing techniques are always a really good start. Even something as simple as box breathing, you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. That's a very simple one that does a lot for your system. And even just anything kind of a grounding technique. Something that just makes you feel centered, slow everything down, gets you focused back on the moment because we have so many things happening all the time. Sometimes that's overwhelming in itself. So if we can just slow down, feel connected to the ground, feel connected to ourselves again. That's a very simple one too. That's super helpful.
Right?
So yeah, I think, but definitely echoing what Jenny said about those basic needs. That's usually where I start. I'm like, have you got enough water, food, some sort of movement? And one that I think more of a sign that something's going wrong that I always ask about too, that some of my students don't always like, I talk about, I'm like, even the bathroom, if you're not going to the bathroom consistently, that means some other things. Um, and so even though they don't always like talking about that, it
Right,
is still a
right.
basic need.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
really focusing, if you can't focus up here with all the higher needs, focus on those basic ones and getting those met.
And then you hear a lot of self-care. Is that part of that self-care, or is it taking a nice bubble bath and right, and the whole aromatherapy and stuff, right?
Sure, yes, our,
Yeah.
our vision of self-care versus what it really is. Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah, I mean, self-care certainly is some of those routines. There's tremendous mental health to be gained with our routines, and self-care can look a whole lot of different ways with that. But self-care really at the end of the day is the ability to use boundaries and choose a life that supports you. And so boundaries mean maybe we make choices on our own behalf and not what maybe culturally or others expect us to do, which is basically, do I need to say no to things?
right. Okay, well, that's great. Do you have any other thoughts, or did I miss anything you want to add to this conversation before we end?
I guess the last thing I would say is if you're not ready for counseling or if you don't know what it is, it's okay to ask questions. I know it could be maybe harder in the community, but especially in college counseling centers, you can ask some questions. You can ask what it looks like. You can try it out, and then if it's not for you, that's fine. But you have a lot of power in counseling, and it's okay if you just want to play the 20 questions to figure out what it looks like more before you commit to it because maybe you've never heard of counseling or never experienced it before. So it's okay to ask questions.
Thank you so much. I know you two are very busy, and I'm so glad we were able to work this all out. You take care of yourself too, right? Are you
Awesome.
two
Wonderful to meet you. Take
mhm.
care.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
That was an insightful interview. Let's hope it brings about mental health awareness, not just for May, but for the whole year. Thanks to Jenny and Kathryn from UW Whitewater Health and Counseling Services. Last Saturday was my book launch party. It was great to celebrate the launching of Raleigh Peters and the Lumberjack Ghost with friends and family. Heidi, a fan, read out loud from the first chapter. She did a great job. Thank you, Heidi. And thank you all for listening. Please subscribe and share. But if you happen to see me around town and my lips are moving, know that I'm talking to myself.